Hi guys, my name is Apo. I'm currently doing a motorcycle tour through Latin America. I started 5 months ago in Los Angeles and I'm currently in Colombia in the Coffee Triangle. I wanted to make this video for you because about a month ago I finally arrived in Colombia after going around the Darien Gap. As you may know, there are no roads that go through the Darien Gap between Panama and Colombia. And so I wanted to make a video about how to cross the Darien Gap, which is actually incorrect to say. What we're really going to discuss is how to get around the Darien Gap. If this obstacle is already stressing you out, that's definitely not the way to go. You will be facing many obstacles on this trip, and your first reaction should not be to get stressed out. Your first thought should be that you're going to overcome it. I guarantee you that you will. It's just a question of how. So let the stress go. It's not the way to go. One thing I forgot to mention is that all the information that I'm giving you is on the webpage that I have listed down below in the description. I also have two other websites. One of them is the photos of this trip. They are definitely worth it. They are just the best ones. And the other one is the blog. I have a blog that I'm writing of all the adventures that I have on this trip. Sometimes they're quite long, but there's usually a good message in them, and I think they're well worth it. You get a feel of what it is like to be out here doing this. Always ride safe, always be careful, and remember to enjoy it. So your first options for crossing the Darien Gap are to ship it, which means that you would be separating from your motorcycle. You can do this by plane, or you can put your motorcycle on a container and ship it on a boat. When I went and asked about how to ship it by plane, the cheapest estimate that I got was about $900. So for me, that wasn't cheap at all. But I think it is the fastest way of getting your motorcycle across. And for shipping the container, you don't need the entire container for just one motorcycle, so I would recommend that you look for people who have vehicles, who have jeeps or trucks or cars that want to cross the Darien Gap, and you share it with them. The problem is you really should be clear about how you're going to split the costs of not just the container, but also the shipping fees, the port fees, the taxes, and all that stuff. One thing that I can say about shipping it, whether it's by plane or whether it's with a container, is that, sorry, I got a bug on me. There's a lot of steps involved. There's a lot of paperwork involved, and what's worse, I actually shipped it by container, and when the container arrives at the port, there are so many unforeseen costs that came up that unfortunately whatever bill or whatever fee they want to charge you, you just have to accept it, because if you don't get your motorcycle back. So you sort of are in a corner. You're cornered in that sense. Let's see what else. I shipped it with two other vehicles. Originally they knew that they had to pay $1,400 for the container, and my share of that $1,400 was $200. There was a Jeep, there was a truck, and my motorcycle. And thereafter, once the container arrived in Cartagena, we had another $1,000 total that we ended up paying just to receive our container and the vehicles. And unfortunately, I ended up having to pay $400 instead of the original $200. So as you can see, it's just the costs add up. I thought I was getting a good deal, but not at all. And not to mention, we had to spend additional days both in Panama and in Colombia, going to different offices, going to different places, just to get the process completed. So all is well. I ended up getting the motorcycle. The option that I do recommend is going with the sailboats. There's plenty of sailboats that take tourists from one country to the other along the Caribbean coast. They are not all the same. Some of them are very, very reputable and have been doing this for a long time, so they are very trustworthy. And other ones I would say are not. I actually have read about people who have had their motorcycles dropped into the ocean. So don't go with just any sailboat, go with one that I recommend. If you check out the webpage in the description, you'll see a list of the ones that are trustworthy. Not all sailboats will accept motorcycles, but again, the ones in the list will. So if we think about the costs, it's going to be a little bit steep, so get ready for it, but believe me, it's well worth it, and it's probably your best option. So the cost of one person on one of these sailboats, when I asked about it, was $550. The $550 includes all your meals on the sailboat, and you don't just go directly from one place to the other. You stop and spend a few days in the San Blas Islands, which are the most picturesque islands off the coast of Panama. And so aside from going to these beautiful places, you get to go scuba diving, you get to see some of the Kuna culture of the indigenous people there, and you have all your meals provided to you, and these are delicious seafood meals, sometimes with lobsters and so forth. So I would say definitely $550 is well worth it. If we compare to a one-way flight from Panama City to Cartagena, the one-way flight is $350. So paying an extra $200 for such a amazing days in the ocean, in the sea, I think is well worth it. The cost of transport of taking your motorcycle with you on the sailboat, for me, was quoted at $450. $450, I would say, is fair. It's not just the cost for transporting your motorcycle from one place to another. It includes all the costs that you will ever come up against to get your motorcycle out of Panama and to get your motorcycle into Colombia. So this includes customs. This includes the days that you will have to stay somewhere to deal with the paperwork. They will cover your stay. They will cover your meals, everything. They walk you through the whole thing. So definitely $450, I would say, is worth it. If I had to do this all over again, I wouldn't have to even think about it. I would go with the sailboats. One thing about taking the sailboats, because there's so many different options, there are ones that I would not trust, to say the least. I've read online about people who have had their motorcycles dropped into the ocean, and as you can imagine, with all the salt water, it causes things to rust. So I would say, if you check out in the description, I have links to the sailboats that are the most reliable, and go with those. You have to book them far in advance, but they are well worth it. Definitely go with one of the ones that are well reputed. And finally, the last option, but I would say is not really an option for most people, is just to go around the coast, the Caribbean coast, and to ask people with boats or with ships if they will take you. I think this is a terrible idea, because ultimately you never know. They might be criminals, and when you're in the middle of the ocean, they could slit your throat and throw you off the boat and sell your motorcycle. So always, you have to consider if it's worth it, even if you're trying to do this trip really cheap. I've heard of some people that do it and they get great stories out of it, but it's a big risk, and I don't advise it. There's another option, I would say, where people hop along the Caribbean coast with speedboats. And this is basically going from, I believe it is Puerto Lindo. They go from there to Puerto Obaldia, and from Puerto Obaldia they go to Zapsuro. From Zapsuro then to Turbo, and then from Turbo You can go wherever you want. It's connected to the rest of the country with roads. This might be a little bit cheaper than having your sailboat. Actually, it is cheaper, I'm sorry, than going by sailboat, but the difference is that again, your motorcycle might fall into the ocean, because these boats, they're speedboats, they're not really equipped to take on motorcycles. You never know the type of people that you're dealing with. They don't have set schedules of when they will be arriving at the ports and so forth. And finally, it's rust. You always want to think about protecting your motorcycle from the salt water, because if your motorcycle is exposed to it, you potentially will have rust on your motorcycle, and well, then you have to consider if it was worth it. The damage, if the damage on your motorcycle was worth the money that you saved by going with a cheaper option. Okay, that's it.